struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, take time on it. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people, struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know. We gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere. Make no mistake, 'cause we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupununi and the Essequibo, take time on it. Though we may criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one caress, not a blade of grass. So we ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We are a peaceful people, struggle is we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces from foreign places talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. We ain't giving up no mountains, we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is all I know, we gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow and never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here, and we ain't moving nowhere, make no mistake.
Members, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, please be seated. I have as the next speaker the Honourable Member Mr. Royce-Dale Ford. Valda, any update?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, but Mr. Ford will not be joining us this afternoon.
Okay, so we may have to take him later on, if he's gonna come back.
I'm not sure.
Okay. And now let me invite the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, the Honourable Anand Prasad.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I begin my budget presentation this afternoon, I would like to respond to the three words that the honorable member David Patterson ended with: better must come. Let me inform this honorable House, Mr. Speaker, that the best is on the side led by Mohammed Irfan Ali. Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "Then the Lord said to me, the prophets are prophesying lies in my name. I have not sent them or appointed them or spoken to them. They are prophesying to you false visions, divinations, and idolatries, and the delusions of their own minds." Quote from the Holy Bible, Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 14. Mr. Speaker, that is how I would characterize the opposition's lackluster and weak budget presentations. I have been listening day after day, and it seems to me like they are singing the same busted rhythm and record. Mr. Speaker, budget after budget, and it's the same old recycled arguments on a new paper to capture headlines and cheap political points. Mr. Speaker, these honorable men and women come to the House and seek to unjustly criticize this budget when they have not done any preparations. Mr. Speaker, the PNCR, APNU AFC, opposition is a stranger to the truth. They are, like the verse in Jeremiah, false prophets who only seek to preach unto the people false visions and delusions of their own minds. Mr. Speaker, the opposition members were elected not to grandstand and oppose the budget for opposing sake. We have sat and listened to some of the most strange, ignorant, and visionless debates about Budget 2025 from the APNU AFC parliamentarians. Their remarks have been illogical and ravenous, failing to recognize the tangible benefits of Budget 2025. The only exception, Mr. Speaker, has been the Honorable Mrs. Geeta Chandan Edmund. Mr. Speaker, through you, I want to say to this honorable member, Mrs. Chandan Edmund, it was a wise person who said, "It is better to walk alone than follow a crowd going in the wrong direction." Mr. Speaker, I have participated in budgets for 2020, 2021, 22, 23, and 2024. It bothers me that the members on that side fail to comprehend the tremendous impact these budgets have had on the livelihoods of our people. Something is wrong here, Mr. Speaker. It's as if they are completely oblivious to the fact that ordinary citizens are benefiting from these developments. Mr. Speaker, the people of Guyana can attest to this. Mr. Speaker, after all, the speakers from the opposite side of the House can try to save face, but I can foresee that 99% of them will not be here for Budget 2026, including the Honorable Opposition Leader Aubrey Norton. They are nothing more than seat warmers. Mr. Speaker, this is an election year. Maybe the Honorable Member Norton and his seat-warming crew minds are elsewhere. They might be obsessed with orchestrating a plan or plot to attempt to rig the 2025 elections. Mind you, we are still awaiting for the APNU AFC to present their SOPs. Mr. Norton, honorable member, we and the whole world are still awaiting on you and the AFC to produce your statements of poll. 5 years is not enough time to prove the PNC, APNU AFC was cheated. Don't be like the prophet Jeremiah described in that quote. Either prove your word has value or zip it. Mr. Speaker, we are still waiting on Mr. Ramjatan, the honorable member, to report and prove that Russians were attempting to meddle in the elections. Mr. Speaker, it was at earshot, the raucous and fish market-like presentations of the honorable opposition members Jarita Fanans, Nima Flu Bess, Amanza Walter Desir, Chronicle fraudster Shera Duncan, Dishonorable UG fraudster, I'm referring to the Honorable Ganesh Mahipal. They come here to bring us the tales of untruthful stories of their phantom people who they have claimed that they visited and consulted about the budget. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what the ordinary, real folks are saying about the budget. A student, Sheena Williams, said, and I quote, "This budget certainly has goodies for me. It has the right measures and fiscal policy that will take Guyana forward. I do not think the PNC or AFC or APNU AFC would have done so well." Mr. Speaker, a construction worker, Mr. Dave Prasad, said, "A lot of people are happy right now. We will have a better future with this budget." A housewife and mother of three, Angela Scipio, she said, Mr. Speaker, "I am thankful because I have 3 children, and the money will help me to send them to school and look after my family." Mr. Speaker, these are just 3 examples. There are countless persons throughout Guyana who are praising the PPPC government for Budget 2025, which provides these incentives that can lead to household prosperity. Mr. Speaker, the opposition members seem to be good at criticizing, but where are the recommendations? They would have been more effective if they had examined the estimates of Budget 2025 in a holistic and macro way. After all, it was the opposition leader, Mr. Norton, who said in a Kaicho News article dated January 18th, 2025, that this budget is garbage. This is disrespectful, myopic, and unbecoming of an opposition leader who aspires to someday lead our country. This is even more disrespectful to the Guyanese people. But instead of giving credit where credit is due, or acknowledging the sound fiscal plans laid out for the year 2025, the honorable opposition members come to this house telling us tales laced with a healthy dose of fiction, half-baked stories, concocted fallacies, and manufactured narratives. Mr. Speaker, they have brought nothing of substance and value to this debate. Mr. Speaker, it was heart-wrenching to know that the APNU AFC regime crippled the sugar industry by shutting down 3 sugar estates and displaced over 7,000 workers, which affected in excess of 32,000 persons indirectly. Mr. Speaker, it was the PPPC government who restored workers' dignity, decency, and pride. Sugar, like rice, like bauxite, are important commodities in sustaining the Guyanese economy. Mr. Speaker, much has been said in this House by the opposition that over the years the PPPC government has wasted monies in resuscitating the sugar industry. Mr. Speaker, regardless of what the opposition said here in the parliament, sugar will become profitable. It will not fail. Sugar is too important to fail, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I wish to laud the Minister of Finance for his allocation of $13.3 billion this year for the continued progress and mechanization which will definitely change the future of the sugar industry. Further, Mr. Speaker, I wish to laud the injection of $430.9 million allocated to the rice industry and $2.9 billion for other crops to support agricultural expansion. Mr. Speaker, I now shift my attention to the taxation of the previous regime, which implemented a slew of tax measures, double them on the hard-working Guyanese population. These include a variety not limited to water and electricity bills, motor vehicle registration increased, taxes on agricultural machinery, machinery for mining, VAT on pharmaceutical, VAT on used tires, new fare structures for huskers, educational material, data all increased. Mr. Speaker, to add insult to injury, I believe they even introduced license for horse carts, donkey carts, dog licenses, chicken license, bicycle license, VAT on toothpick, and VAT on baby foods. Mr. Speaker, their tax measures covered from cradle to grave. But we in the PPPC government will take care of our people from cradle to grave with zero taxes, increase in taxes. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, not forgetting the attempted larceny of the $18 million signing bonus, which they claimed they thought was a gift. Mr. Speaker, I can now go on listing almost every scandal during the APNU AFC time in office, but I will not, save for time. Mr. Speaker, I now wish to refresh the minds of all Guyanese who suffered immensely under the PNC regime of rigged elections. In excess of 3 decades, to be precise, 33 years, the PNC and APNU AFC rigged elections to stay in power. Undemocratic executive lawlessness, highway banditry, barefaced thievery, subversion of our constitution, moral and fiery destruction of our economy, and to recall their words, slow fire, more fire, lack of democracy, and holding on to power at all costs. Mr. Speaker, the Guyanese people were morally reduced to a state of submission. Mr. Speaker, how can I and the people of Guyana forget the opposition's agenda in rigging countless elections? It is obvious that rigging of elections is in their DNA. The elections of 1953 was the first free and fair election won by the PPP. In 1964, elections were won by the PPP, but the PNC coalesced with the UF forming the government. Every other would be rigged. The rigging architects of the PNC created phantom voters, fake lists, fake overseas voters, voter impersonation, hijacking of ballot boxes, flaws with the Electoral Commission and its personnel, thuggery, protests, political killings, etc. Mr. Speaker, this was how the rigging DNA evolved. Mr. Speaker, people were denied basic food items such as flour, split peas, cooking oil, sardines, potatoes, and if caught, can be jailed. Mr. Speaker, there are serious consequences when elections are rigged. It resulted in undemocratic rule which drove our country into bankruptcy and crippled essential services. After lobbying the world leaders for free and fair elections, in 1992, the PPP marked the return of democracy to Guyana and the beginning of a new era. Mr. Speaker, the People's Progressive Party Civic toiled to bring Guyana back, build Guyana strong, restore pride and hope in our people, and champion the good governance structures and institutions up to 2015. Mr. Speaker, a strategy had to be conceptualized to put Guyana back on the developmental path. While this reconstruction was ongoing, Mr. Speaker, the political opposition was undermining in making life hard, miserable, and Guyana ungovernable through street protests, which led to the burning of businesses, government institutions, including schools, looting of stores, and beating up on Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the 5 dark years. The 2015 to 2020 period. In 2015, they formed a government and occupied executive office, the PPPC, the party. APNU AFC immediately brought economic hardships to these shores. On the 21st of November 2018, the Honorable Dr. Barra Jagdev, now Vice President, led a successful no-confidence motion against the APNU AFC regime. They were defeated hands down, and in accordance with the Constitution, the government had fallen, and elections were to be held in 90 days. Mr. Speaker, this turned into the darkest period in our country's history. The authoritarian APNU held Guyana hostage with a heavy feat on the necks of our people and overall the nation. Mr. Speaker, Guyana was under undemocratic rule as the PNCR, APNU AFC were slumbering illegally in office. During the said period, the APNU AFC was planning the rigging of the general and regional elections. Mr. Speaker, this APNU AFC, the sanctimonious gangsters, tried to steal our freedom, elections,
Mr. Speaker,
and democracy in broad daylight.
Mr.
That
Speaker,
is their legacy.
I rise, Mr. Speaker, to
Mr.
bring.
Speaker,
Honorable Minister, I have the Honorable Member, Ms. Ferguson, on her feet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand on Standing Order 41 that refers to content of speech. You would recall, Mr. Speaker, that a list of unparliamentary words were circulated as a reminder. The honorable member just made reference to gangsters. Just use the words gangsters in reference to the opposition.
Upheld.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, you'll have to withdraw that.
He's so uninspiring.
I withdraw, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have articles and documents that talk about the rigging and electoral theft that took place in this country. As warned in the good book, Mr. Speaker, all Guyanese must remain vigilant and not get excited about the unrealistic and irrational promises, as the Vice President Barra Jagdeo put in his article dated January 28, 2025. Mr. Speaker, after the no confidence motion, the election of 2020, this morphed into dark period in our country's history. Mr. Speaker, the PNC APNU AFC government failed on constitutional reform, education, national security, public infrastructure, health, finance, and agriculture. Mr. Speaker, let us review the achievements and outline what we propose to do in Budget 2025. We have already increased salaries and wages, doubling it by 46%. We have increased the income tax threshold. Mr. Speaker, 9 billion will go towards the cushioning the effects of cost of living this year, in addition to countless measures that we have already pursued. Roll back the taxation policy of the APNU AFC government. Double old age pension. Restore the children cash grant, bringing it to 50,000 per year. Created over 50,000 jobs, new and part-time. Distribute over 30,000 scholarships to the Guyanese people. Made University of Guyana tuition free, writing off millions of dollars in student loans. Reform and introduce new local content legislation. Strengthen laws and ROPA to deal continuously with threats to our electoral freedom. Revolutionize the oil sector, bringing sweeping changes. Mr. Speaker, a 10,000 universal health voucher for each Guyanese will be rolled out this year. Mr. Speaker, a historic 100,000 cash grant for every newborn, which will commence in 2025. Mr. Speaker, another $100,000 is budgeted for every Guyanese over 18 to help secure their future, which has already commenced. Mr. Speaker, this is just the beginning. The PPPC government is committed to building a prosperous future for all. Mr. Speaker, under the APNU AFC government, 1,972 community service officers were dismissed, leaving those Amerindian youths without employment. In stark contrast, the PPPC government has not only revived this vital program, but has expanded it, employing 2,759 CSOs to date. These young people have now empowered with valuable skills in tourism, garment manufacturing, small engine repairs, ICT, solar installation, and farm equipment operation. Mr. Speaker, with an investment of almost $12 billion from 2020 to 2024 under the Amerindian Development Fund, we have made youth empowerment a top priority. This initiative has restored hope, ensured that Amerindian villages continue to thrive with dignity and purpose. Let us not forget, Mr. Speaker, that this government has also allocated over $27.1 billion in direct support to Amerindian communities, transforming lives through education, transportation, agriculture, cultural preservation, and by encouraging Amerindians to actively participate in these economic programs. Mr. Speaker, under the previous APNU AFC administration, not only were the Amerindian communities neglected, but the entire country was left economically bankrupt. Guyana economy was in shambles with no clear vision for growth or development. The previous government failed to provide the leadership and foresight needed to move this nation forward. Further, Mr. Speaker, I wish to highlight that 91.5 million has been invested in women-centered projects, further demonstrating our commitment to fostering inclusive growth and development across all sectors. Mr. Speaker, in every one of our budget presentations, we have created the fiscal space for Guyanese to benefit overall, who are, of course, our friends, families, and favorites, including you, the members of the opposition. This government's priority has always been to ensure that all Guyanese share in our growing prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I will now illustrate how Budget 2025 unfolds. Roads and bridges, 209 billion for the commencement of work on the new Quarantine Bridge and the ongoing expansion of the Linden to Mbura Highway. Health, $143 billion for 6 regional world-class hospitals, along with the state-of-the-art pediatrics and maternity hospital at Ogle. Air transport, $7 billion for the construction of a new world-class terminal at Cherry Jagan International Airport and rehabilitate hinterland airstrips. River transport, $9 billion for the construction and rehabilitation of stellings and ferries. Police, $34.4 billion for the advancement of works on a model state-of-the-art police training academy, the construction of Brickdam Police Station, and the construction of several police stations and outposts countrywide. Solid waste for the $13.2 billion for the investment in new landfill sites, compactor trucks, mini excavators, and a hazardous waste cell. Water, $23.1 billion for several new water systems and wells. Human services, $58.5 billion. Ongoing support for senior citizens, including subsidies for water, electricity, and along with the construction of a new facility for the elderly. Energy, $88 billion for the completion of phase 1 of the 300 megawatt gas to energy project, expanding the renewable energy initiative countrywide. Housing, $112.6 billion, with over 40,000 house lots already distributed, with 25 house lots for additional distribution. This will surpass our manifesto promises made, promises delivered. $175 billion for education. The education of our children is our top priority. Several initiatives are underway, including the expansion of the National School Feeding Program and the provision of reading and workbooks for nursery schools, along with textbooks for primary and secondary schools. Agriculture, $104.6 billion to enhance food production and to sustain food productivity for our local and export markets. Mr. Speaker, those were just a few of the big ticket items in Budget 2025. Mr. Speaker, I've heard on many occasions opposition members speaking how we cannot eat roads, and that's a fact. That's a fact, Mr. Speaker. But let me enlighten the opposition members and the naysayers that the building of roads and bridges connects people and goods, which drives economic growth and development. It provides access to essential services. It serves as a lifeline. So we are building out our country's infrastructure and laying the foundation for generations to come. I now turn to local government and regional development. Mr. Speaker, in 2025, all local democratic organs will continue to get enhanced support, which is aimed at creating unified and strong community-oriented bodies that respond to the needs of the people. Isn't that what we're here for? Financial support through subventions and ongoing support for the Community Enhancement Workers Program and the National Pathway Program. Additionally, we will further support investing in a number of garbage compactor trucks, mini excavators, strengthening the local democratic organs. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt in my mind, or even the mind of every objective, non-partisan, and non-biased Guyanese, that this year's budget is progressive, pro-working class, pro-private sector, pro-poor, realistic, and people-centered. Mr. Speaker,
Mr. MP, you will need an extension to continue.
Mr. Speaker, humbly request that the Honorable Speaker be given 5 minutes to complete his,
Thank you,
his
Honorable
presentation.
Minister Warren. Honorable Minister Prasad, you can continue.
Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 is the embodiment of carefully crafted policies and projects to continue our brisk and bold agenda for the transformation of our economy. Mr. Speaker, what good is sight without vision? It seems to me that those on that side of the House are lacking of both. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government is creating an environment where young people and Guyanese of all ages can work hard, attain their dreams, and accomplish their visions. Mr. Speaker, in the words of President Barack Obama, and I quote, "A budget is more than a series of numbers on a page. It is an embodiment of values." That's correct. So, Mr. Speaker, this budget 2025 is a budget with promises, values, and a commitment to the Guyanese people. It is not an election year budget. Therefore, there is no election gimmick. What you see is basically what the Guyanese people deserve at this time in our history. Mr. Speaker, this budget prepares all of Guyana to benefit from a reduction in electricity prices by 50%. This PPPC government is a caring government. We will remove all bridge tolls at the new Demerara Harbor Bridge, Wisma Bridge, the Berbice River Bridge, benefiting, according to Budget 2025, over 50,000 daily commuters. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we don't just talk about achievements. We demonstrate them through actions. This budget is proof of our unwavering commitment, and under the PPPC government, we will not only meet but exceed every promise made. We are fully committed to ensuring the success of this budget and securing the prosperity of every Guyanese. The rapid growth and development we are experiencing today is a direct result of the PPPC's dedication to good governance. In sharp contrast to the APNU AFC, which was defined by bad governance that stagnated growth and destroyed the economy, we are now democratically guiding this country towards a prosperous and sustainable future. Mr. Speaker, a tree is known by its fruit. Therefore, a person can be judged by the results of their actions. Judge the People's Progressive Party Civic by our track record. I project 2025 will be no different because we have the winning SOPs. Mr. Speaker, please permit me to offer my sincere congratulations to the senior minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and public service, Dr. Ashni Kumar Prince, and his competent staff for the stellar performance in the sector and bringing this PPPC budget to this assembly. Now, let's get down to business. As I commend this budget to this House. Mr. Speaker, Guyana has become a nice place. Guyana is a nice place. And Guyana is a nice, nice place. I thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Excellent.
Thank you, Minister Hussad. And now for the honorable member, Ms. Annette Ferguson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the acknowledgement. Mr. Speaker, I rise this afternoon from this side of the House to passionately contribute to the crucial budget debate of 2025. As this is my first address of the new year, I want to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to extend best wishes or heartfelt wishes to you, your family, your dedicated staff, and all members of Parliament, alongside every Guyanese citizen, for a filled year with productivity and prosperity in 2025. Let us embrace this opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to respect one another amid our differences. I urge each and every member of this House to grow in maturity and demonstrate a steadfast unity as we navigate the challenges ahead. Together, let us serve our nation with unwavering determination and a spirit of collaboration that will inspire all Guyanese. Budget 2025 arrives at a pivotal moment for our nation, a year when every Guyanese faces crucial decisions that will safeguard or jeopardize our national wealth for future generations. Mr. Speaker, this is not just another year. It is the year when political parties, movements, and various interest groups will fiercely compete for the heart and soul of our beloved nation. We must remember the wisdom of Proverbs 14:34, and I quote, "Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin condemns any people." And let us reflect on Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked Beret rule, Bishop, the people mourn. And this is taken from King James Version. Undeniably, many Guyanese are ready to rise to the intellectual challenge, especially in the light of the No Child Left Behind policy that ravaged our educational landscape in 2010. Over the past 5 years, we have witnessed two contrasting governments, Mr. Speaker, one leading from 2015 to 2020 without the benefits of oil resources, and the other from 2020 to 2025 or 2024 harnessing these resources. One focused on empowering the people and creating a pathway to a better life, while the other prioritized infrastructure that has unfairly enriched, Mr. Speaker, select families and allies of the People's Progressive Party. It is imperative that my budget presentation will offer a clear, compelling overview of budget speech, followed by a thorough analysis of the sector I oversee, Mr. Colin Crowell, an evaluation of current measures, and my earnest recommendations and suggestions to guide us further for a brighter future. Mr. Speaker, I urge you to critically assess the budget for 2025 unveiled in this Honorable House on Friday, 17th of January 2025, set at a staggering 1.38 trillion. Evident that Dr. Singh, tasked with his presentation, was not in his usual spirited form. His discomfort was palpable. It is my belief, echoing the sentiments of many Guyanese, that this budget fails to demonstrate the necessary foresight and strategic planning, essentially for fulfilling its professed theme, a secure, prosperous, and sustainable Guyana, quote and unquote. This theme, Mr. Speaker, echoes that of previous year's budgets, with hardly any innovation. In 2020, our plan for prosperity, protecting our people in a COVID-19 environment, strengthening democracy and the rule of law. In 2021, Mr. Speaker, a path to recovery, economic dynamism, and resilience. In 2023, Mr. Speaker, or 2022, steadfast against all challenges, resolution in building our one Guyana. In 2023, Mr. Speaker, improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow, and in 2024, staying the course, building prosperity for all. Thus, I pose these crucial questions to the government. Who exactly will you be securing in 2025? Who stands to benefit from this promised prosperity? And how will our nation ensure sustainable growth? Every responsible government must grapple with these questions. I fear that the theme for Budget 2025, Mr. Speaker, neglects the marginalized and vulnerable individuals who live well below the poverty line in our oil-rich nation. This is not an anti-poverty budget. Instead, it appears to secure the interests of the affluent, enabling the wealthy to strive while neglecting those in dire straits. Mr. Speaker, as I listened intently since the presentation of the budget, I pondered whether our nation truly began anew on 16th of May 2015, coinciding with the coalition government takeover, or if the People's Progressive Party civic return to power on 2nd of August 2020 signified a regression. The history of our nation is fraught with the mismanagement of the PPPC, categorized by 2 decades of incompetence and inefficiency that the Guyanese populace has not forgotten, Dr. Ashley Singh. I will not waste my precious time, Mr. Speaker, in detailing their dismal track record, which is all too familiar to us. Instead, I must assert that they have reverted to their old ways with a familiar horse with no name. It begins with C and ends with N, haunting every sector. I would like to share a profound observation from a thoughtful young Guyanese, Mr. Speaker, who reached out to me while Dr. Singh was speaking. And this is what the youngster sent to my WhatsApp. Why is he only discussing the APNU failures? This man has launched his campaign right there via WhatsApp 17th of January 2025 at 14:58 hours. I implore you, Mr. Speaker, to consider who will be the true beneficiaries of this budget and to advocate for a future that uplifts all Guyanese, not just the privileged few. This is the moment to demand a budget that genuinely addresses the needs of our people, Mr. Speaker, and fosters a government that prioritizes everyone, those living in poverty and also those who are affluent. Mr. Speaker, we are all familiar with a well-known quote from the second president of the United States of America, the late John Adams, 1770. And this is what he said, Mr. Speaker: facts are stubborn things. In borrowing this famous quotation, I can, without contradiction, apply it to the People's Progressive Party Civic, who, despite, Mr. Speaker, being confronted with the facts and evidence, still finds it in their nature to be mendacious, striving to prove themselves superior. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, in paragraphs 1 and 8 of the budget speech on pages 2 and 3 of 111 of his budget speech, the Honorable Singh could neither restrain himself nor refrain from repeating the usual rhetoric that Guyanese have grown weary of from the PPPC's chief priest, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Bala Jagdeo, whose only attendance in the National Assembly seems to be to meet with select individuals outside of the chambers, and when appropriation bills are up for passage, the record of this 12th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, will prove me right. In examining paragraph 110 of his speech on page 3 of 111, Honorable Member Dr. Singh listed several purported achievements of the People's Progressive Party Civic over the last 4 years. I am pleasantly surprised that the PPPC constantly boasts about delivering some 50,000 house lots, a manifesto promise deliver. However, Mr. Speaker, in examining the speech, I have not seen anywhere listed the figure 50,000. Furthermore, the term house lot is also absent. I will address housing substantively. Mr. Speaker, I found paragraph 114 of the budget speech to be quite intriguing. Why is that? The honorable member stated, since August 2020, successive budgets have outlined the key pillars of the modern and prosperous Guyana that we are building for the long term, quote and unquote. I must respectfully disagree with the honorable member. Over the last 5 budgets, 4 of which were funded by oil resources, there has been a cumulative budgetary allocation 6 times greater than the coalition government, whose programs and projects were not funded through oil resources, mind you, Mr. Speaker. I am still grappling with the idea that these budgets have been successful and are contributing to a modern Guyana when Guyanese have yet to witness the successes on a personal and individual level. On the sectorial developments and the agenda for 2025 in paragraph 432 on page 30 of the budget speech regarding bauxite, Dr. Singh is being disingenuous in claiming that the bauxite industry suffered a tragic blow, during the period from 2015 to 2015. It would be remiss of me not to remind the House and the people of Guyana of what transpired well before May 2015, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the confusion in the bauxite industry. Kaiser News, April 28, 2010. Who was the government? Not the coalition. Mr. Speaker, another headline, the bauxite workers are at a disadvantage. And this is a letter to the editor carried in Kaiser News dated May 12th, 2010. Who was in government? Not the coalition. Mr. Speaker, Guyana Bauxite Workers Union bitter at Roussel government. Mr. Speaker, this was carried on the 25th of January 2010. Who was in government? And Mr. Speaker, you will remember quite clearly because you were the Minister of Labor. And you was the Minister of Labor, Mr. Speaker, based on...
And did a fine job too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, bauxite workers refuse to eat food from Cockroach Kitchen, 16th of November 2010. Who was in government? The People's Progressive Party Civic. The bauxite workers' struggle is about workers' rights. Who was in government on December 11th, 2010? 2009, not the coalition government. It was your Ashni Kumar Singh. Mr. Speaker, I want to put on record because, you know, oftentimes we continue to hear 200 taxes, 380 taxes, and then we 400 taxes. You know, these people are good at fiddling with and adding numbers. But Mr. Speaker, you would recall in this honorable house, a question was put to the Honorable Dr. Ashley Singh by yours truly, Mr. Speaker. And this is what is recorded in the Hansard of Thursday, the 20th of July, 2023. And this is what, when the minister was asked the question, can the Honorable Senior Minister provide a detailed list of the 200 taxes and fees on items as claimed to have been imposed by the coalition government during the period May 2015 to August 20th? This is what the honorable member laid in the National Assembly as his response. The list of taxes and fees imposed by the APNU AFC government during the period May 2015 to August 2020 has been extensively reported on and ventilated in the public domain. You know, Mr. Speaker, this is the disingenuousness of these people and the deceitfulness of this government. But we on this side of the house, we would be able to Mr. Speaker, I urge you to turn your attention. To pages 57, 58 of 111 in the budget speech, particularly paragraphs 4.139 and 4.14 under the heading Housing. It is essential, Mr. Speaker, to acknowledge that these paragraphs contain significant inaccuracies and unfulfilled aspirations. Furthermore, I assert that while the PPPC previously resorted to allocating bush lots or swamps for housing schemes without a thorough and cohesive strategy, the coalition government has diligently, Mr. Speaker, prioritized the development of cohesive and sustainable communities. This shift, Mr. Speaker, represents a commitment to not only meet the housing needs of our citizens, but to also elevate the quality of life within our neighborhoods. Let us embrace a vision, Mr. Speaker. Let us embrace a vision, and I believe the coalition government would have left a blueprint at the Ministry of Housing and Water. Honorable Mr. Speaker, the housing and water sectors are not just crucial, they are the very foundation of human existence. In my academic pursuit, Mr. Speaker, I have delved into Maslow's hierarchical needs or hierarchical theories of 1943, a powerful framework that outlines our society's universal needs. And this is what Maslow had to say. Ascending towards the most profound human emotions. We are all familiar with the 5 essential components of this theory: self-actualization, esteem, love and belonging, safety needs, and physiological needs. These components are not mere concepts, Mr. Speaker. They reflect our intrinsic desires for security and fulfillment, and they can be powerfully applied to underscore the importance of robust housing and water systems. Investing in these sectors is not just a necessity, it is an imperative for achieving a thriving society where every individual can reach their fullest potential and experience true well-being. Let us champion the cause for accessible and safe housing and water, for it is addressing these fundamental needs that we cultivate a richer and healthier society. Mr. Speaker, it is essential that we frame this conversation not with clarity and purpose. In his recent presentation, Dr. Singh resorted to his theatrical style, making baseless accusations against the coalition government for not doing nothing in the housing sector. Mr. Speaker, when I heard this term, nothing, I had to go to the Google and try to get an understanding of what this word nothing means. And this is what Google said to me. Google said nothing means not anything or no single thing. Well, Mr. Speaker, I got news for those over there, to let them know what the coalition did between 2015 and 2020 in the housing sector. So I'm going there. Mr. Speaker, in sharp contrast, the coalition, even in the absence of oil resources, has demonstrated unwavering commitment and strategic acumen by effectively utilizing funds. You're hearing this thing? The coalition government didn't come to the National Assembly to get funds to drive the housing sector. But let me remind the Honorable Crowell and Rodriguez that the housing sector has a revolving housing fund. And rather than us coming to this National Assembly between 2015 and 2020, we utilized the funds from the housing funds to correct many of the defects that we found in the housing sector. This diligent investment, Mr. Speaker, not only addresses immediate housing needs, but also supports our visionary goal. What we were doing, Mr. Speaker, we were building cohesive and sustainable communities. Together, we are deriving real change and progress in the housing sector. That is what we were doing. Furthermore, whereas the previous PPPC government treated the housing fund, Mr. Speaker, like a flush, we'll call it again, a flush fund or a slush fund. Yeah, that is how they treated it, Mr. Speaker. Our administration has prioritized genuine, impactful solutions. The evidence speaks for itself, Mr. Speaker. Unlike our predecessors, we have never stood before this House shifting blame for the over 60,000 backlog we inherited, nor for the substantial number of unprocessed titles of the many new areas awaiting integration into local authority jurisdictions, along with a dreadful state of infrastructure. As a responsible and visionary government, Mr. Speaker, what we did, we rolled up our sleeves and we were proud to have invested over $2 billion from the housing fund to rectify the large amount of issues we found in houses built before May 2015, which were left to languish due to the People's Progressive Party civic negligence. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Kroll and Rodriguez, over the past 4 years, they are yet, Mr. Speaker, to present a clear and comprehensive plan to tackle the pressing housing needs of our citizens. It is disheartening to observe that their focus, Mr. Speaker, seems to me, and I guess to many Guyanese, limited to mere photo opportunities with allottees during the identification of their house slots. Just go to their Facebooks and you will see what is happening. Mr. Speaker, I must ask, have these members truly taken time to engage with the detailed documents left by the coalition government? If I were to question them, would they even be aware that in December 2016, the Inter-American Development Bank, through the HUD, Mr. Speaker, we were able to get a loan a loan of $517,250, Mr. Speaker, to support our housing development, the national strategy for our housing, our housing sector. This technical cooperation, Mr. Speaker, executed by the IDB's Housing and Urban Development Division, was not just a formality. It aimed, Mr. Speaker, to bolster Guyana's Central Housing and Planning Authority in developing a robust national housing strategy in alignment with a broader sustainable development goal of creating inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable cities and human settlements. Mr. Speaker, the urgency of a strategic approach, Mr. Speaker, to housing cannot be overstated. Our communities deserve tangible action and leadership that moves beyond temporary photo ops. It is imperative, Mr. Speaker, that we hold our representatives, the people of Guyana, must hold that government responsible or accountable when it comes to housing development. Mr. Speaker, it is essential to recognize that Guyana's urbanization trends exhibit two critical characteristics that pose significant challenges for our housing and urban development policies. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? These urgent needs are seldomly acknowledged by the People's Progressive Party civic. Because you know why, sir? Their intent is not to study what is happening in the housing sector. Their intention, Mr. Speaker, is if they find some, if they gotta convert, if they have to convert playgrounds and communities for for house lots. That is exactly what they're doing. They don't have no strategy, no plan, no coherent plan for the housing sector. So, Mr. Speaker, I know that I have so much to say on this housing thing. But you know what? I will speak a bit off record. Mr. Speaker, we were told in this house in 2021 or 2022, 2022, the Honorable Colin Crowell came to this house and he said to this house in his budget speech of 2022 that the government, his ministry, the government started to look at the informal settlements. Those are persons who are squatting. And that, Mr. Speaker, a report was being done, the study was being done, and it will be presented to the National Assembly. Mr. Speaker, that was reported to this House on January 26, 2022. We are now January 29th, 2025, Mr. Speaker. 3 years after, we are yet to see that report coming to this National Assembly where we all can have our input and devise a strategy how we can deal with informal settlements. Mr. Speaker, the People's Progressive Party government currently struggles with significant shortcomings in governance, particularly in their reliance on comprehensive data analysis to inform decision-making, while they proudly proclaim, Mr. Speaker, 50,000 house lots delivered, a manifesto promise. It's imperative that we critically examine the truth behind these assertions. Mr. Speaker, as a former minister who dedicated my service to the housing sector from April 22nd, 2019 to August 2nd, 2020, I am especially concerned about the content of paragraph 4.14 on page 58 of 111. Here, the ministry claimed to have developed a total of 85 new housing schemes. Well, Mr. Speaker, I challenge Mr. Crowell this afternoon to lay a list of all 85 new housing schemes that they developed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you hear? The coalition ain't do nothing. The coalition ain't do nothing between 2015 to 2020. But Mr. Speaker, the truth behind this, and
Honorable member, the truth is I've given you 2 minutes more, so let us get the extension of a further 5.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude our presentation.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Honorable member, you may continue.
thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, available lands for housing in 2019. Mr. Speaker, this is what we left at the Ministry of Housing. We left LBI, we left Prospect, we left Cummins Lodge, we left Parcel 115 Providence, we left Block WW Plantation, Monrepo, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we also left Experiment. We left Skelder number 75, Mr. Speaker. We left Block Y number 75 Village, and the list can go on, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, because of time, just a couple days ago, I took a walk in LBI and several other housing schemes in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government, I know Colin Crowell will come after me to boast about the number of houses built. And honorable member, thank you. But Mr. Speaker, this is what is currently happening in LBI. Unfinished work. Unfinished work, Mr. Speaker. Unfinished work, Mr. Speaker. Unfinished work, Mr. Speaker. So for you to come to the House to say to the people of Guyana that you have allocated some 50,000 house lots is far from the truth. Mr. Speaker, the evidence will show. The evidence will show, Mr. Speaker. All right, you can see just now. Oh, Lord, these things. Mr. Speaker, how can 50,000 house lot be given out when you have people 2010 waiting, never receive a call from the ministry, 2009 waiting, 2011 waiting? These are the evidence of people, Mr. Speaker, who are yet to receive a call from the Ministry of Housing to be given their house lot. And I know that the honorable member, the ministry never issued out 50,000 house lots. Mr. Speaker, if we left approximately, let us say, about 68,000 house lots. If you claim you gave out 41,000 house lots, and you know what they did, Mr. Speaker? When they came to power, you know what they did, Mr. Speaker? When they came to power, the lands that we give out in Prospect, in Experiment, in LBI, in Diamond, Mr. Speaker, what they did, they shift the numbers. So if you got lot 1 under the coalition government, they move you to lot 10 in the very area. That is what this People's Progressive Party Civic done. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, he will come here to say that we give out 7,000 house lots. But you know what? The very house lots that we give out, the 7,000, they're claiming ownership. They are claiming ownership. So, Mr. Speaker, no way has this People's Progressive Party Civic issued 50,000 house lots. So, Mr. Speaker, the coalition is on record as I prepare to wrap up. The coalition is on record saying, Mr. Speaker, that if the government, we know that our people are finding it difficult to access a loan from the banking institutions. I believe, Mr. Speaker, what a government should do is to apply as a pilot test the idea by the coalition at this moment. We're speaking about a rent to own. They got Venezuelans living in those chicken coop in Diamond, Mr. Speaker, and paying no rent. They're living free. Why is it that Guyanese cannot receive? Why is it that the government cannot give those people the houses and allow them to pay a monthly rental in a special account, Mr. Speaker? They don't like the people. They don't want Guyanese to own their own homes. They want Guyanese to rent apartments. They want Guyanese to squat. That is how they have Guyanese, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, quickly, let me touch a bit on water. The water situation in this country is atrocious. We approved over 22 billion in 2024. We heard about all the plants, the treatment plants being built, Mr. Speaker, and still, this is the state of water flowing through people's tap, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like to suggest to this government that they need to do better, Mr. Speaker, in the housing sector. And as I prepare to conclude, Mr. Speaker, I so much I want to say on housing, but this 30 plus 5 ain't working. But Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, I stand here firmly guided by the immutable principles of our Creator God Almighty. The scriptures remind us in Micah 6:8 to act justly and to embrace mercy. In Isaiah 1:17, we are called to learn justice and combat oppression. Leviticus 19:15 stipulates that we must not indulge in injustice or show favoritism, regardless of wealth or status. Proverbs 31:9 compels us, Mr. Speaker, to advocate for the vulnerable, ensuring they receive their rightful justice. Today, Mr. Speaker, I have done precisely that by fiercely advocating for the poor and powerless against this oppressive document known as Budget 2025, hastily assembled to secure the wealth of the people for those on the opposite side. This budget, Mr. Speaker, will not bring prosperity to our citizens in the oil-rich economy under the People's Progressive Party Civic. We must take a stand for justice and the rightful use of our nation's resources. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I, Annette Natasha Ferguson Collins, unequivocally cannot support Budget 2025 as it stands. I urge Dr. Ashley Singh and his government to either withdraw or make significant amendments to this budget. It is essential, Mr. Speaker, that we prioritize the needs of the poor and fatherless rather than catering to the interests of the wealthy and prominent. Let us refocus our efforts, Mr. Speaker, to ensure a budget that truly serves our most vulnerable citizens. I pray God grant my colleagues on that side of the House uncommon eyes. Mr. Speaker, may God continuously bless us and bless our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member, Ms. Ferguson. And now for the Honorable Member, Minister of Water and Housing, the Honorable Colin Crowell.
Mr. Speaker, we just heard the previous speaker, the Honorable Annette Ferguson, and in winding down on her many conclusions, she alluded to the period or the tenure, the time that she served as minister. The fact is, her legacy will always remain, she ran with the mace. Mr. Speaker, it is with deep sense of duty and overwhelming commitment to helping to make the lives of our citizens better that I stand here today to support Budget 2025, a secure, prosperous, and sustainable Guyana. Budget 2025, which was presented in this August House on January 17th by our esteemed Senior Minister responsible for finance, the one and only Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh, outlined our government's forward-thinking and ambitious fiscal plan that will build on the strides that we made in the last 4.5 years, or 54 months to be precise, and the sustainable expand and extend the rapid economic growth that Guyana is undergoing. It is a fact, Mr. Speaker, that Guyana's remarkable growth, while largely due to the increased oil production and a rapidly growing oil and gas sector has allowed us to make significant gains in every sector, and particularly in infrastructure development, from farm to market and community roads to highways, bridges and wharves, to modern schools and health facilities, new housing areas, newly constructed subsidized houses that are available to low, moderate, middle, and high income applicants, to tax reforms that increase disposable income and stimulated economic activity in all of the sectors. And all of this while maintaining the fiscal sustainability by carefully and prudently navigating the pitfalls that can so easily beset us. Mr. Speaker, we have undisputably demonstrated throughout our stewardship that we are more than capable of managing the affairs of this great nation. Even while we have invested aggressively and heavily in key sectors like housing, infrastructure, and public services, we have ensured that every Guyanese benefits from the social safety nets that we have introduced, from cash grants to public assistance and education subsidies. We have and continue to include young people and young professionals in our nation's plans as we help to realize their dreams, from home ownership to higher education, lower taxes, and generally providing a strong, stable, enabling environment that can foster their personal growth and development. Well, while you think about this, Mr. Speaker, cast your mind back to 2015 to 2020, when we witnessed firsthand the confusion that the coalition government visited on this land, from the ridiculous 2 a.m. curfew to the unimaginative and lazy approach to the housing sector. It was musical chairs at housing, and every one of them was off key. Not a single effective strategy came from them, and yet today, while we are busy developing new, building affordable housing, and expanding our infrastructure portfolio, these people look for every reason to complain and criticize without offering anything tangible. They see the zombie of wrongdoing everywhere, even though it is their minister with responsibility for housing who was found to have been giving contracts to her husband and was subsequently removed from the ministry. They were so bad that their own MP supported a no confidence motion against them. They were so bad that they are saddled with an incomplete monstrosity in the form of Durban Park. They are so bad that we had to face international embarrassment and risk having our country become a pariah because of their brazen attempt to steal the 2020 elections. Mr. Speaker, it is our government who, after the madness of 2020, breathed a new life into our country. Yep. It is our government that had to restore confidence in our economy. Yep. These past 4.5 years have seen our government commit to the task of rebuilding and re-energizing the country as we lead a transformation that has never been seen in this dear land of ours. And it is a privilege to be on this side, to witness and be part of these achievements, as Budget 2025 is an excellent blueprint for us to build on the gains we have made and to continue to lead this great nation. I turn quickly to, Mr. Speaker, to the period before 1992. Mr. Speaker, as we are approaching the middle of this, the 5th year in government, it is necessary to consider, as the young people say, how it started, how it's going. First, let me make it clear that the housing crisis that engulfed Guyana started before 1992 and stemmed from years of neglect, mismanagement, and underinvestment before 1992. It was not just a crisis of inadequate infrastructure, but also one of access and affordability, which had left thousands of citizens without proper shelter, hope for a stable conditions, and high rental costs. There was a significant shortage of houses, particularly for low-income families. Many families were living in overcrowded conditions with inadequate access to basic amenities such as potable water, electricity, and sanitation. Squatter settlements littered urban and peri-urban areas. The public housing program was underfunded and failed to meet the growing demand. Widespread poverty further exacerbated the housing crisis. Additionally, because the program was poorly designed, young professionals, single parents, vulnerable groups were all shut out. Housing in the hinterland was non-existent. The lack of government intervention resulted in many communities having poor quality houses, little or no access to a reliable supply of clean water and electricity. I turn your attention, Mr. Speaker, to 1992 to 2015. Mr. Speaker, on our assumption to office in 1992, the PVPC government made the housing sector a top priority. Recognizing the gravity of the crisis, the government allocated millions of dollars at a time that when we were still facing dire economic circumstances, another legacy left by the then PNC. To launch a robust housing program, that is what we did under the PPP. Under this program, more than 100,000 house lots were allocated to low and middle income families. This initiative significantly reduced squatting and informal settlements and allowed citizens to legally own their own homes. We introduced turnkey homes that targeted young professionals and expanded access to utilities. Access to water increased from 25% to over 80% by 2015. We invested in water treatment plants, distribution networks, and upgraded the quality and availability of water. Established the Guyana Water Inc., consolidated and modernized water services, which in turn provided better management and delivery of water. As a result of these initiatives, the housing and the construction sectors were booming by 2015. Building Expo had become a highly anticipated and provided a platform that showcased local and international building and construction products, including new technologies in housing, and catalyzed suppliers and investors, especially the local private sector. I turn your attention to 2015 to 2020, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, the coalition administration inherited a robust housing program from this PPPC government, and almost as if history was repeating itself, they ran it into the ground again. Bear with me as I remind this Honorable House of their promises, their manifesto promise. And for example, Mr. Speaker, their manifesto promised the following: that they will initiate campaign called Renewing the Dream, which will expand and upgrade housing development away from the seaside and facilitate home ownership, not only house lot distribution. That they will ensure that basic infrastructure such as electricity, drainage, roads, water, and other facilities are in place as house lots are issued. Mr. Speaker, their achievement, it was only 3 new areas that were developed under the APNU AFC. And I challenge the previous speaker. Let me name them for you, Mr. Speaker. We have Peters Hall, which was transferred in 2011. Providence, which was transferred in 2011. Prospect Tract A, transferred to CHPA in 2012. Mr. Speaker, if you notice the years, APNU allocated lands, therefore, that were already acquired by the People's Progressive Party Civic prior to 2015. Mr. Speaker, they promised to facilitate a process whereby credit union savings can be used as collateral for low-income housing loans. Achievement, nil. They promised to support a national volunteer corps that will help the needy build their homes. Achievement, nil. They promised to establish new communities and towns in the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, all they did, they built 20 houses in Georgetown to relocate the Broad Street residents. Credit to the previous speaker, and a few houses in the hinterland, but the very Inter-American Development funded project that you inherited from the then Minister of Housing and Water for the hinterland program, that is what you executed. You promised to establish a special fund to provide subsidies to mortgage companies for low-interest loans to low-income families. What did you achieve? Nil. You promised to build starter homes for single parents and other vulnerable persons in society. In every housing scheme being developed, what you did was the very 20 houses I spoke about. You promised to build retirement villages with all the appropriate amenities. What you achieved? Nil. You promised to upkeep the National Beautification Drive. Green spots and parks will be established in each new housing area and village. What you did was a full upgrade to community grounds. You promised industrial development and production linked to be tied to housing with private sector being tax incentives to develop locally produced housing materials. What did you achieve? You achieved nil. You promised to standardize the building codes for new buildings and provide free standardized house plans. What did you achieve? You achieved nil. You promised to develop a national housing database for strategic planning. What did you achieve? You achieved nil. You promised to create a new commercial and industrial zone with new housing areas to enable easy access to these industries by a suitable workforce. What did you achieve? You achieved nil. Mr. Speaker, maybe, Mr. Speaker, let's wait. Maybe we can use Durban Park as their green space promise that has been fulfilled. Not a single one of these prior promises did they make good on. Mr. Speaker, they had time, they had money, they had a successful housing policy to build on, an enabling environment, investors and local private sector support, but yet they failed miserably. You want to come and lecture us here? They were incompetent and lazy and wasted valuable time witch hunting, and like a true bureaucracy, spent much of their time on meetings which produced no real results. Housing became an afterthought while citizens were left waiting. They dreamt that their promise became a nightmare. Under the coalition government, the housing sector suffered from a lack of vision and urgency. Instead of accelerating land allocation and home construction to meet the growing demand, the sector was practically paralyzed. Housing schemes were abandoned or left incomplete. Thousands of applications were languished. Families were stuck in limbo, waiting for allocations that never materialized while still paying exorbitant rents. Those who couldn't afford to wait resorted to squatting on unregulated lands. They even suspended Building Expo. And then what? Like a Tweedledum and a Tweedledee, they spent more than a year coming up with a new name and location for the event, which inevitably failed. It was sheer madness, Mr. Speaker. The coalition's approach was just careless. It was callous. Their inability to prioritize the basic needs of our people were nothing short of an insult to the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, I turn your attention to 2020 to present. By the time the PPPC government assumed office in 2020, after the elections debacle, the housing deficit had escalated, and listen, Honorable Annette, more than 70,000 applications were pending. Housing schemes that began prior to 2015 were either halted or poorly executed. The installation of roads, water systems, and electricity were ignored or delayed. What was once a sector with momentum, they had in the space of less than 5 years become a stagnant landscape of missed opportunities. And once again, Mr. Speaker, it was up to the PPPC government to bring the housing and water sector back to life. And like the fighters and champions we are, once again, we went straight into battle. Mr. Speaker, our manifesto promised to create 10,000 house lots annually within the first 5-year period. And no thank Honorable Annette, first 5 years. To invest in infrastructure for new and existing housing scheme. To remove VAT on building materials. To facilitate affordable financing for home ownership. We committed to promote home ownership among youths and young professionals through tax and other incentives. We commit to promote partnership and incentive private sector involvement in the sector and reinstate water subsidies to pensioners. We commit to expand the treated water to more areas. We commit to upgrade the distribution and transmission of water in urban, rural, and hinterland areas. We commit to reducing losses in the distribution system. We commit to improving access to an enhanced quality of water. We commit to creating the institutional mechanisms to rationalize Guyana water resources. This is what we promise the people of this country, that what we will do in 2020. It's January 2025, 29th of January to be exact, Mr. Speaker. And I can confidently say that in this House today, that we are on the cusp of full achievement of these targets. We have now completed over 95% of those commitments that we have just outlined. Maybe let's give some numbers. We have allocated a total of, listen good, 40,808 residential house lots. And Mr. Speaker, that does not include allocations for commercial and industrial lots. Mr. Speaker, we have completed infrastructure works in over 50 new housing areas and existing schemes. We have installed over 3,123 LED lights on the western East Bank and coast in Berbice. We have constructed and completed major highways on the East Bank and the West Bank. We removed the VAT from locally produced building and construction materials, including sheetrock, concrete boards, and cement. We have built roads, bridges, and culverts in new and existing communities, in more than those 50 communities across the country. We have drilled 157 wells, of which 130 are in the hinterland riverine areas. We have completed the construction of 7 new water treatment plants. We have installed 87,000 water meters, and we are on track to increasing the treated water coverage before the end of 2025. We have collaborated with the Ministry of Finance, Guyana Revenue Authority, and the banking sector to raise the ceiling for mortgage interest relief and lower the residential mortgage interest rates to make low-income mortgage rates more accessible and affordable. We have introduced housing subsidies, housing grants for vulnerable communities. We have provided employment by contracting more than 100 private contractors to construct houses and infrastructure works. We have provided more than 40,000 residents with, for the first time, access to potable water and increased the access in the hinterland from 46% in 2020 to 91% as of December 31st, 2024. We have collaborated with the private sector to provide over 824 commercial and industrial developments in regions 2, 3, 4, and 10. And that does not add, as we be reminded, to the residential house lots. We have recalibrated the way the Central Housing and Planning Authority approves construction permit by establishing this electronic single window system. This intervention has reduced processing time and paperwork. We have restored the pension subsidy to over 28,000 pensioners. We removed the VAT on water consumption, and more than 182 customers are benefiting from reduced water tariffs. As a result, Mr. Speaker, to the tune of $523 million annually, that's what the subsidies cost. We have importantly too, Mr. Speaker, despite the bad mouthing and the exaggerations by the opposition, we have succeeded in reducing squatter and unregulated settlements. Mr. Speaker, I heard the noise first yesterday from the Honorable Ganesh Maipal. He's not here. Challenge me. I just heard from the Honorable Annette Ferguson, who, by the way, she boasts about the period she served, but what the Honorable member didn't say, it took her, she was so eager to be appointed, it took her 9 months to access the office, to even go in the office, because they did not transfer the chairs, the sofas, the blinds, the room to green. Mr. Speaker, let me give some facts today. 41,000, Mr. Speaker, 40,808 residential regularized lots. Listen, Honorable Annette Ferguson, let's go together. And in these, you ask for the list of schemes. Because they're so numerous, and in the interest of time, you'll have to go with me. So let's go. Region 1, we are completing that program this year, so I'll go to what we've accomplished. Region 2, Plantation, Buxton, St. Joseph. We have allocated, Mr. Speaker, 791. Region 3, these are all schemes. Write them down. Go check. Plantation, Edinburgh, Anna Katrina, CI, Stewartville, Metamerzar, Stewartville, East and West, Lenora, Friesland, Laurentier, Katrina, that's in Wales, Vive La Force, Dickension, Plantation, Edinburgh. We have allocated in Region 3, Mr. Speaker, 9,172. Region 4, La Reconnaissance, LBI, Vigilance, Strathspey, Bladenall, Monrepo, Annandale, Good Hope, Two Friends, Lusignan, Non-Paral, Enterprise, Plantation, Cummins Lodge, Little Diamond, Prospect, Great Diamond, Blocks 1, 5, 9, 18, 3, 7, 11, 13. Plantation Hope, Plantation Lusignan, the extension to the Endrak, Larry Souvenir, Plantation Success, and we have just started Silica City. Mr. Speaker, in Region 4, 24,519 allocations. Region 5, Plantation, Baltiok, Shieldstone, Burma, Experiment Phase 2, Bath Block A, Experiment. Region 5, 1,959 allocations. Region 6, number 75, number 79. In Region 6, Mr. Speaker, we have Ordnance, Fortlands, Williamsburg, Hampshire, Blocks 3 and 4, 76, Palmyra, Molson Creek. We have allocated 1,959 in Region 6. Block CHPA, Bartica Extension, Mr. Speaker, we have allocated 132 in Region 7. Region 9, Track CHPA Letem, we have allocated 676. Region 10, the Honorable Ferguson, and where's the other one? Yes, right here, Honorable Sears. Region 10, the Region 10 that you said you would be neglecting. Amelia's Ward, Phase 4, Fitzhope, Conception, Wisma, we have allocated in office 1,598 in Region 10 to date, when you did in a whole 5 years 404 allocations. That gives to the matter. Mr. Speaker, I know maths is not good, but let him go back to the tape, and that will give you 40,808. Somebody asked about Region 8. Though we have designed the area and we're ready to allocate, and you'll hear about that in our future plans. Mr. Speaker, these are our achievements to date. We still have a few months to go. They are real achievements. They are real fulfillment of the promises we made to the people of Guyana. They trusted us, and we have delivered. Today, Our government is working tirelessly to ensure that every Guyanese has access to affordable and sustainable housing and to a reliable supply of clean and safe water. We have delivered to every front for the Ministry of Housing and Water. Did we have challenges, Mr. Speaker? Yes. Did we throw up our hands and complain? No. Why? Because we promised the citizens of Guyana that we will give them a better life and that we will help them to realize their dreams of owning their own homes, of providing safe communities where they are raising their family and develop for themselves. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member threw up a few pictures and called some names. Well, let me interject and pause here now. Mr. Speaker, I present to you the top part of this is Cummings Lodge. The honorable member referred to Cummings Lodge. The very Cummings Lodge that they proudly said that they did some allocations. Mr. Speaker, this is what the status of Cummings Lodge when the PPPC government came into office. Look at the bottom here. These are all persons who have now signed and are able to build. Mr. Speaker, if you want to know how beautiful it looks in Cummings Lodge, just look at this. Look at the houses that have been constructed in Cummings Lodge, and you come here to speak about Cummings Lodge. Mr. Speaker, I'll give you one more example. Let's go to the East Bank of Demerara. The entire East Bank is now allocated. Honorable Member Ferguson, let's go together. Come, let's focus, stay focused, stay focused. Mr. Speaker, at the top, look here. This is what East Bank looked like at Great Diamond. I want to give you two examples. This is what, look here, honorable member. This is what it is now under the People's Progressive Party civic government.
Show us what you did. Show us.
Mr. Speaker,
Show us what you did.
we have laid a solid foundation from 2020 to 2024 by being prudent stewards of the budgetary allocations made to the Housing and Ministry of Housing and Water. This year, our government has allocated $137.5 billion to develop housing and water in 2025. Of this, $112.6 billion is dedicated to the housing sector and will go towards developing new housing areas. We will allocate an additional, a minimum 25,000 house lots this year, of which over 15,000 will be accomplished before June of this year. We will establish 20 new housing areas by June of 2025 to accomplish this 15,000 by June. Mr. Speaker, we will construct more and a minimum of 1,000 houses. $23.1 billion, we will ensure that every citizen will have access to clean, reliable, and safe water, including the installation of new supply systems in the hinterland communities and the construction of new treatment plants, which, when completed, will totally transform and change the vacuum, and we will improve the quality of and availability of water to households on the coastline. Mr. Speaker, the APNUFC coalition government had 5 years to make a difference, but their tenure turned out to be one of the most disastrous periods in our history. Under their watch, the housing sector was practically on life support, and it was our government that had to step up and re-energize it. We invested over $244 billion to breathe new life into the housing and water sector. Housing and water, Mr. Speaker, are fundamental rights. Without them, progress is impossible. Every house lot distributed represents, Mr. Speaker, the hope for a family. Every gallon of clean water supply is a step towards healthier communities. We are committed to transparency and accountability. Our investments are not just about building houses, they are about creating communities, they are about empowering citizens, and they are about ensuring that every Guyanese has access and a place to call their home. The allocations to the Ministry of Housing and Water are justified and are essentially, Mr. Speaker, They represent our commitment to correcting past mismanagement and building a future where every citizen can thrive. Mr. Speaker, I wish to remind the honorable member on their record, I alluded to 3 housing areas only developed. Of the 7,534 house lots allocated between 2015 to 2020, Mr. Speaker, 2,000 of those were done in the run-up to the elections during their caretaker government. Mr. Speaker, hinterland systems were ignored. Investment in the housing sector were slashed. The affordable housing programs were completely abandoned. Hinterland and rural areas were totally neglected, forcing residents to rely on unsafe water source.
Honourable Minister, let us rely on an extension so that you can conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that the honourable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Honourable Minister, you may continue. You have 5 minutes to conclude.
In contrast, Mr. Speaker, our government has restored confidence in the ministry, delivering with speed and precision. The 10 to 25 budget investments will create 10,000 jobs in construction, engineering, and related sectors. It will stimulate local economies by providing opportunities for small businesses in housing schemes. It will reduce inequality by ensuring that low-income families and hinterland communities are prioritized. As I said, we will establish over 20 new housing schemes in regions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10, each equipped with proper roads, drainage, electricity, and recreational spaces. We will expand the housing program for low-income, moderate, middle, and young professionals. We will provide housing subsidies and grants for single mothers, low-income earners, and first-time homeowners, ensuring that no one is left behind. In the water sector, we constructed 5 new water treatment plants in key regions in the coastland to ensure that we are on target to accomplishing a minimum of 90% access to treated water here on the coastland, which includes 16 small plants and as well as small powered wells for the hinterland communities such as Kato, Letta, and Barometer, bringing safe water to thousands. We will modernize Georgetown's water network to address decades of underinvestment and inefficiency. We will introduce green housing developments, integrated renewable energy solutions to lower utility costs. We will expand the energy solutions we will expand rainwater harvesting system in remote areas, reducing water insecurity by climate change effect. These projects, Mr. Speaker, are designed to provide real benefits to the people of Guyana, benefits that were absent under the previous administration. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Housing and Water stands as a beacon of this administration's commitment to the people. The 2025 budget is a vote for progress, for equity, and for development. I call on this House to join me in approving these allocations and ensuring that every Guyanese, regardless of income or location, has access to affordable housing and clean water. This budget represents the vision of a united Guyana, where development is inclusive, sustainable, and far-reaching. Let us reject the failures of the past and embrace the future of opportunities and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I want to extend, in closing, I want to extend thanks to the Senior Minister, Dr. Ashish Singh, and his team for the excellent work in the national budget, which reflects a deep understanding of our country's needs, balances fiscal responsibility with sustainable policies that promote development and opportunity. Thank you to the staff, hardworking staff of the Ministry of Housing and Water, and through their agencies, Guyana Water Inc. and Central Housing and Planning Authority, for their continued commitment and support for the work being done in the ministry as we continue to triple and double all the previous work that used to be done with a similar amount of staff. Even Saturdays, they're working continuously. Mr. Speaker, I therefore am delighted to lend my unreserved support to Budget 2025 under the theme, a secure, prosperous, and a sustainable Guyana.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Crowell. We will now hear from the Honorable Dr. Karen Cummings.
Lucky I didn't sue him.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, special invitees, members of the media, good afternoon to you all. And I think I also want to especially congratulate the two newest MPs here, honorable members Suraj Singh and Ms. Nandrani Kunja to the Assembly. Just let you know that I am a member of the opposition and my duty is to oppose. It's a budget debate, expose, and when necessary, depose. Mr. Speaker, let's start with the facts. Budget 2025 is here. It's big, bold, and once again, a big, bold disappointment for the hardworking people of Guyana. Yes, we do acknowledge the Finance Ministry staff for their dedication in putting together Budget 2025. But no amount of hard work can mask the cold, hard truth. This budget is a masterpiece of exclusion.
Mr. Speaker.
Designed for the elite, crafted for the well-connected, and funded by the sweat of struggling Guyanese families. A budget for the few and not the many. Mr. Speaker, I join with my colleagues to examine the budget presentation made by Senior Minister in the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and public service, Honorable Member Mr. Ashley Kumar Singh, which was delivered on January 17, 2025, under the caption, A Secured, Prosperous, and Sustainable Guyana. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 stands at $1.382 trillion, 20.6% larger than Budget 2024. Regrettably, falls short, severely short, of the reasonable expectations of most Guyanese. It was an event that did not engage them. This budget is supposed to secure prosperity for all. Instead, it has secured more privileges for the privileged, more riches for the rich, and more burdens for the already burdened. While the government sings its favorite tune of economic growth, the average Guyanese sees nothing in their cupboards, nothing in their wallets, and nothing in their future. The only people who are truly prospering are the minister's F club, friends, family, and favorites. Mr. Speaker,
Let us be real. Prosperity is not measured by gross domestic product, GDP, figures in an air-conditioned offices, in air-conditioned offices. Prosperity is when a mother does not have to choose between buying food and paying school fees. Prosperity is when young graduates can find jobs without knowing someone. Prosperity is when hard work, not political connections, determine success. The struggle is real, Mr. Speaker. Guyanese are not just struggling, they are suffocating under the weight of a broken economy. Employment. The government brags about job creation, but the real question is, who are the people getting these jobs? Inflation. There is a reduction in discretionary expenditures and inflation, which was observed in paragraph 337. It indicates that 12-month inflation rate at the end of 2024 was estimated to be 2.9% because of, or rather, was driven by food prices, which had risen by 5.6%. Mr. Speaker, I will repeat that food prices have jumped, yet the government claims things are stable. Stable for whom? Poverty. Nearly half of our population, 43.4%, lives on less than US $5.50 per day. That is not building a secure Guyana. Rather, that is building a survival economy where families live paycheck to paycheck, hoping that the next check comes in time. And when people cannot afford basic necessities, the society crumbles. You would recall that in 2020, Guyanese murder rate was the fourth highest in South America and the sixth highest in the Caribbean. And in 2023, the homicide rate for Guyana was 19.7 per 100,000. That's balanced in South America. Hence, Mr. Speaker, when there is poverty, there is not only the possibility and potential for an increase in serious crimes, but there will be more domestic violence and certainly more desperation. In other words, Mr. Speaker, wealth inequality can be a precursor to societal ills. Mr. Speaker, how does a country that boasts of being the fastest growing economy leave its people starving for opportunities? There is little or no quantitative or qualitative change seen in the lives of the ordinary Guyanese citizens. Even the so-called middle class has not enjoyed a livable wage and income in this land of many resources. This budget, Mr. Speaker, gives no real answers, just empty slogans, empty platitudes, and recycled promises. Hence, in other words, I should say in the words of the African chant, a luta continua. The struggle continues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, should I remind the Honorable Minister with responsibility for finance that real meaning must be given to Article 40, subsection 1 of the Guyanese Constitution, which speaks to the right of every citizen of Guyana to be happy, creative, and to live a productive life, free from hunger, ignorance, and want. But here we are, hungering, struggling, and with no clear vision for relief. Instead of addressing these issues with urgency, this government remains focused on optics and not on outcomes. Mr. Speaker, good planning is essential to securing sustainable economic prosperity. Budget 2025 demonstrates ineffective governance and poor planning. Mr. Speaker, there is governance, and there is good governance. The Guyanese people are interested in good governance and considers the 8 principles set out by the United Nations. We on this side of the divide, the side with the people of Guyana, would want good governance. That is transparent, not tricky, accountable, not absent, proactive, not performative, and competent, not crooked. So, what do we have in our hands? A government that excels in excuses and underperforms in execution. A government that believes in a few cash grants here, a few cash grants there, everywhere a cash grant. Though maybe good in itself, but the government is convinced that cash grant can substitute for sustainable economic policies. Mr. Speaker, allow me to set the record straight on the condition of the health sector under the coalition. The people of our country will not be deceived by empty platitudes as they live their lives. They already know the difficulties they face in accessing health care services that were available before the PPP government squandered the gains. The misleading claims indicated in the budget speech are intended to put our people into a false slumber, only to awaken sooner than later to the additional financial burdens with which they will be saddled. Of additional concern are the unfactual and derogatory remarks that preface the minister's other statements on health care. And I cannot let them remain unchanged. It is therefore necessary for me to contrast the condition of the healthcare system under the coalition with that of this present government. The minister's introductory remarks suggested that the health sector under the coalition was dwindling its thumb, where the nation's health was concerned. Implicit in his remarks, too, was the notion that the country has made strides in the health sector under the administration of the PPP. Nothing could be further from the truth, as the evidence that I will present reveals. The vital statistics accompanying this budget presentation contains a series of metrics on health. At this juncture, I wish to address 2 of them, because they are central to the provision of inpatient care and are very often factors in the survival of patients. The first metric refers to the number of hospital beds in Guyana, and the second refers to the number of nurses serving the people of this country. We use the number of hospital beds in the country to determine the strength of the healthcare delivery. This is a global measure to determine the extent to which a country cares for its citizens. I want Guyanese to know that the country had an average of 42 beds per 10,000 population during the period 2000 to 2002. I want to point out that there was a further decline from 2004 to 2014. In 2004, the number of hospital beds dramatically declined to 25 per 10,000 Guyanese. That was the reality that the coalition inherited in 2015 when it took office. Currently, it stands at 36 beds per 10,000. Now you are in the driving seat, and you have to own it, what is happening. You have to own what's happening. Hence, after spending nearly 400 billion Guyana dollars on the health sector, this government could not bring this country to a better place than it was 30 years ago. This is clearly not a government for the future. Human resources. Mr. Speaker, the administration has allowed a good proportion of our health professionals to leave the healthcare system. The evidence is right under our nose in the appendix to the minister's presentation. From 2016 to 2019, there was an average of 5 nurses for 10,000 Guyanese. The coalition was working to build a reliable healthcare system and one that recognized the commitment and sacrifice coming from our healthcare workers. The spiteful and reckless conduct of this government, with its refusal to pay nurses a decent wage and to honor them for their sacrifice and commitment to this country, has now left every citizen depending on fewer nurses for care, and the remaining nurses seeking second jobs. It is not surprising, yet it's worrisome, because the data shows that we now have 23 nurses for every 10,000. These are the facts that the government hides from the Guyanese people and public so that they cannot recognize and understand the risk that is involved in their medical care. Without enough nurses, no amount of cash grants will bring you to the care that you and your family need. Those Guyanese who heard what the minister had to say on the measures to be taken if a nursing professional needed to seek a second job, even the unschooled would know that if the nurses were adequately remunerated in the first place, there would not be any need to look for a second job or to seek out greener pastures. There is one other point that I wish to the people of Guyana to know, and that is the healthcare system is in a state of crisis. In recent times, people who have sustained injuries that may not have been life-threatening would have succumbed to their injuries. I want to state it is a consequence of the decline in the availability of healthcare assets and providers that there is the experience or this experience and an occurrence. However, given the track record of this government, one is left to wonder about the correlation. Universal access to healthcare. Mr. Speaker, it's not a secret that primary healthcare must be the pillar of the nation's health strategy and should take center stage if universal health coverage is to be achieved. The national public health system has an obligation to deliver public health services to the citizens of Guyana, regardless of whether they reside on the coastland or hinterland, according to Mr. Granger in his book, Public Health is a Public Good, Risk and Responses in Small State. The author went on to note that everyone should receive the health services needed without incurring financial distress. In other words, Mr. Speaker, universal access cannot mean turning up at a public tertiary institution for a service which is expected to be rendered, only be told, look some money or a voucher, please go to a popular private institution to access the needed screening assessment and analysis needed, that you need. Facilities. Mr. Speaker, at paragraph 4:108, reference is made to a plethora of health facilities such as specialty, pediatric, and maternity hospital at Ogle, the new hospital at New Amsterdam, and at regional hospitals and health centers, works which continue to be ongoing but not yet completed. We on this side of the divide pay strict attention to the training complexes which are to be built in Suddy and New Amsterdam, in addition to the 2 dormitories for health sciences training, to the tune of $852 million. We stress that there must be value for money. We also wish to sound the alarm that the health facilities and living quarters which are to be upgraded and retrofitted be built under the standard building code and with the correct specifications to avoid any undue calamity or catastrophe to the hard-working health professionals of our country. Equipment. Paragraph 4110 speaks to expanding equipment pool, thus accommodating laparoscopic surgery, laparoscopic kidney transplant, bariatric, and minimal invasive surgeries. We will continue to sound the battle cry that there must be adequate and skilled biometric technicians for the maintenance of such equipment. Mention is also made of equipment at the telemedicine sites at regions 1, 4, 5, 8, and 9. With allocation of $4.3 billion to the purchase of medical equipment in the health field, it is expected that there will be quality assurance, better diagnosis, leading to better treatment and monitoring of the patients. There seems to be no intentional move to procure mammogram machines and have equipment available to carry out tests for prostatic-specific antigen so that patients can have access to the best care. As you know, breast cancer is a top-ranking cancer among the females, whereas the prostate cancer ranks first among the males in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, as we run equipment, I should be optimistic because of the services rendered at the Diamond Hospital. But patients have fallen off wheelchairs. Observation revealed that there were no rubbers on the wheels of that important equipment. How is that possible in an oil-rich economy? And Mr. Speaker, where is the porters? At that institution, I think the Sunday, no porters. People want jobs. According to Primary Healthcare Performance Initiative, 2022, a strong primary care is dependent on affordable, timely, and dependable access to safe, effective, and high-quality medicines and supply. Mr. Speaker, the government is proudly allocating $28.1 billion for drugs and medical supplies. Yet the Auditor General's report tells a damning story. Billions paid upfront to contractors, yet nearly $1 billion worth of drugs and supplies remain undelivered. Let me put it bluntly. Sick people cannot swallow press releases. Hospitals cannot treat patients with missing medicines. This is not just inefficiency, it is reckless mismanagement. The Honorable Minister must immediately implement an electronic logistic management information system, the ELMIS, to track the stock, the usage of the drugs and the losses. No more expired drugs, no more empty shelves, no more excuses. If this government had the political will, it would have done this already. Chronic diseases. Screening for chronic disease can allow for a gain in lead time by early diagnosis, as there is the early identification of risk factors before the health practitioner, and guess you can distinguish clinical, help him to distinguish the clinical semiology, the signs and symptoms. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about chronic disease, non-communicable diseases, and we're talking about diseases like heart disease, ischemic heart disease, diabetes, and of course the silent killer, hypertension. In Guyana, they are thriving. Why? Because prevention is an afterthought. The Hearts protocol expansion is a step in the right direction. But what about the hinterland regions? What about communities where doctors are scarce and screenings are non-existent? The government's approach to health care is like patching potholes while ignoring the crumbling road beneath. We need nationwide screenings, early intervention programs, and community-based health workers. Let's stop treating symptoms and start preventing diseases. Mental health. Mental health is more than just a photo op. Mr. Speaker, mental health is the orphan of our health system. There is no health without mental health. Yet it's underfunded, ignored, and dismissed. The conversion of the New Amsterdam Hospital into a mental health facility sounds impressive, until you realize there is no comprehensive plan, no feasibility study, and no real investment in long-term mental health care. The government is obsessed with buildings over brains. A few extra hospital beds will not fix the mental health crisis. We need trained professionals, community-based mental health services, and nationwide suicide prevention programs. If the government is serious, let's see the data, the indicators, and the measurable targets. Otherwise, this is just another election year gimmick. Communicable diseases. Are we prepared or just hoping? Mr. Speaker, of course, the minister spoke about the different diseases and communicable diseases which we want to eliminate. Of course, that's commendable. We all want to get rid of lymphatic filariasis, leprosy or Hansen's disease, malaria, hepatitis C, the vertical transmission of HIV, and of course some vaccine-preventable disease. But Mr. Speaker, Guyana is facing a dengue crisis. 10,000 cases, 11 deaths, I think within up to September. And yet we are still scrambling in 2024. Where is the vector control strategy? Where are the mosquito nets for at-risk communities? Where is the aggressive fogging campaign machines, especially in regions 1, 2, 4, and 6? Climate change is fueling disease outbreaks, yet this government is always playing catch-up. Mr. Speaker, hope is not a public health strategy. This government must act now, not after another outbreak sweeps through our communities. Maternal child health and adolescent health, it's a national embarrassment. Mr. Speaker, Too many Guyanese mothers are dying in childbirth. Too many newborns are not making it past their first breath. Recently, we saw two tragic maternal deaths, one at the Georgetown Hospital, one at New Amsterdam Hospital. Families are mourning, and the government is silent. Within 48 hours, a mother complains of negligence and malpractice to the CEO of the Georgetown Public Hospital. Valiant efforts must be made to monitor both mother and baby to enjoy safe delivery and optimal health in the light of the declining nursing staff and adequate supervision. We already know the delays that can form barriers to proper maternal health care. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm imploring the Health Minister and the team to do something about this frequent occurrence, which brings discomfort and death to our citizens of Guyana, who access the maternal health services throughout the 10 administrative regions, especially in Region 6, the East Berbice Quarantine region. Mr. Speaker, the measure of support for newborn babies with a one-off grant of 100,000 is noted, though there's a lack of context. And by the way, my colleagues, you have to be careful with your ideas, because I sent a question to the clerk asking Minister, with all these maternal deaths and the cost of living, could we have a grant for mothers? And so there it goes. There it goes. So you have to be very careful. So you have to be very careful of giving out your ideas. And I know I see with the opposition leader when you have to, kind of gauge when to give your ideas out. Mr. Speaker, but it never reached the paper, it never reached the paper. Mr. Speaker, the measure of support for newborn babies with a one-off grant of 100,000 is noted, though there's a lack of context. What should have been said is that because of the first 1,000 years of days in a child's life, where there can be a threat of malnutrition, be it over malnutrition or under malnutrition, but malnutrition, they have different stages. It could be mild, moderate, and severe malnutrition too. So I just want to get our record straight. The nutritional component of the child can be enhanced with this grant, which can assist in the growth and development in the child's physical, cognitive, and social development. But the question remains, as with the rising cost of living, one wonders if this sum is adequate. Where are the emergency response protocols? Where is the accountability for medical negligence? Okay, let me speak a little bit again on shortage of critical staff for health sector of Guyana. According to the Auditor General's report, when considering the performance of the maternal unit of the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation, it was found that out of the proposed staff strength of 280, there was a shortage of 103 staff members. In addition, there has been also a shortage of 49 qualified midwives, 18 staff midwives, short, 14 patient care advocates, short, 10 ward managers, short, 11 staff nurses, short. In addition, for the delivery room, the nurse-to-patient ratio had been 1:3 rather than 1:1. In the labor ward, the nurse-to-patient ratio had been 1:8 rather than 1:3. And in the postnatal unit, the nurse-to-patient ratio had been 1:15 rather than 1:6. Where is the investment in maternal health training and rural obstetric care? A one-time 100,000 baby grant might buy diapers, but it won't buy a future if the child doesn't survive the first 1,000 days due to malnutrition and lack of postnatal care. Mr. Speaker, motherhood should not be a death sentence in Guyana. A government without vision cannot lead. Mr. Speaker, a country's budget is more than just numbers. It is a statement of priorities. A budget that fails to create real jobs fails the people. A budget that keeps people hungry fails the people. A budget that neglects health care fails the people. And this budget, it's a spectacular failure. Mr. Speaker, let me share our new vision for Guyana. Mr. Speaker, our vision is clear. When we take office, we will make economic growth work for the people, not just the privileged few. Turn jobs into careers so people can build a future, not just survive. Fix the healthcare system because good health should never be a luxury. This is not just politics. It is personal because when the people thrive, Guyana thrives. The people will decide. Mr. Speaker, the people are not fooled. They see the reality. They feel the struggle. And they know that this government has failed them. Budget 2025 was supposed to be about a secure, prosperous, and sustainable Guyana. Instead, it has delivered insecurity for the working class, prosperity for the privileged few, sustainability for those already at the top. But the good news, this is temporary. Because in the next election, the people will choose a government that fights for them. And when that day comes, we will deliver not just promises, but results. Mr. Speaker, this budget is being sold as a step forward, but the reality is clear. It is an expensive band-aid on a health system in crisis. While the government touts its spending increases, the average Guyanese citizen is left behind. Where is the impact? Where is the accountability? Where is the vision for a modern, functional healthcare system that truly serves the people? As I summarize, Budget 2025, a high-priced illusion. The government boasts that 143.2 billion is being poured into the health sector. But let me ask the people of Guyana, does your hospital have enough doctors? Do you wait hours, sometimes days, for basic treatment? Can you afford your prescription medications? This is not just about numbers, Mr. Speaker. It's about the citizens' lives. And under this administration, the health system is failing the people who need it most. So, the PNC-APNU vision is for real change and real solutions. Under the APNU-AFC government, we will build a truly modern healthcare system, not just expensive structures with empty promises. Our plan includes a national health policy focused on real public needs, not political optics, a strong primary healthcare system that prioritizes prevention and early intervention, universal access to affordable medications with transparent procurement and distribution, let's say practices, expanded maternal and child health care, ensuring no mother dies needlessly in childbirth, a real mental health strategy with community-based care, not just hospital beds, preparedness for health emergencies, so outbreaks like dengue don't catch us off guard. These are some of our points. We can't give you all, lest you want to copy them. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me thank the Finance Minister for presenting what I would call is government's exit budget. It's an exit budget. This budget is a desperate attempt to buy goodwill before an election. But the people of Guyana are not fools, as I said before. They see the waste, the mismanagement, and the lack of real progress. To the Guyanese people, my good friends, comrades, I say this: you deserve better. You deserve a government that puts your health, your future, and your well-being first. This budget does not deliver that future, and that is why we cannot and will not support it in its current form. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member Dr. Cummings. And now for our Honorable Minister of Health, the Honorable Dr. Frank Anthony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, honorable members. First of all, I want to thank Dr. Ashni Singh and his staff for another excellent budget, guaranteeing everyone in Guyana will benefit from this budget. Whether you're a child or an adult, whether you live in the hinterland or on the coastland, whether you work for a business or you own a business, there is something for everyone in this budget. But Mr. Speaker, over the last couple days, we have been listening to the various presentations. And, you know, as valiantly as my colleagues have been trying to explain this budget to the opposition, it is like trying to explain quantum physics to a goldfish. They just don't get it. Mr. Speaker, Guyanese across this country are happy and satisfied with Budget 2025. They know that their health is in safe hands. Their education is assured. They have jobs and job opportunities. They have better roads, better security, and they can now own their own homes. These are unprecedented times, Mr. Speaker, when the lives of every Guyanese are being transformed every day. People are proud of their country. Every day, people across various communities are joining hands with this government to build a one Guyana, a prosperous Guyana, where the aspirations of our motto, one people, one nation, one destiny, can be fulfilled. Mr. Speaker, while optimism reigns eternal among our Guyanese brothers and sisters, listening to the APNU and AFC members, one can only deduce that they reside in an alternate universe, detached from reality. Over the past few days, their presentations have exposed their shallow understanding of the economy, the budget measures, and of course, the aspirations of the Guyanese people. And when they fail to advance any cogent arguments, they fall back on the usual tired innuendos and misrepresentation. Mr. Speaker, the Guyanese people have grown weary of their negativity. We are fed up of the rhetoric, and we had enough of your empty promises. The public is not deceived. While some of those on the APNU benches, their faces might be relatively new, but they peddle the same old divisive message: nothing novel, nothing constructive. Mr. Speaker, looking at the APNU, one can not help but feel sorry for them. Imagine the AFC divorce the PNC, or vice versa. We are still to find out. But while they are divorced, they are still co-inhabiting in this house. APNU is now what I should call an oxymoron. It is a divided coalition. Imagine they can't run their own house. You can't manage your own coalition, and you want to come here and lecture us on how to run this country. We would not allow that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let us examine their tenure while they were in government. And I'll just stick with the health sector. There's a famous Michael Jackson song, and in that song, I think the title is, "Do You Remember?" Many of you might know that song. So I want to say, do you remember the Success Street bond, the scandal there, where apparently a friend, maybe a family, maybe a favorite, or a flatterer, they were given a contract. They were given a contract to store pharmaceuticals. And when they were storing the pharmaceuticals, they gave the man, they gave the man $25 million up front so that he can then go and buy the property. And then after buying the property, he turned back and he rented to the APNU AFC for $12.5 million a month. But that was not all. That was not all. He rented it because they gave him a contract for 3 years. And so one would have thought that having paid so much money for this bond, that they would have utilized the bond. But then when you go to the Auditor General report, they said from July to August 2016, nothing was in the bond. Yet we were paying $12.5 million per month.
That's what you call friends and family.
And not only that,
Call friends and family.
when they finally put something in the bond,
Who really get him on?
it was on the 1st of September 2016.
That's what you call friends and
That's when they put something in the bond. And then the something, we can go to the something, because they had some contraceptives and some other things that they were storing in the bond. We also had a parliamentary visit to that bond. And when the parliamentarians went there, we found that they were also, apart from the contraceptives, they were also storing an old CT scan machine. And Mr. Speaker, if we add up the cost per month for this 3 years of $12.5 million, we could have bought a better CT machine than they had storing in that bond. And I know the comrades on the other side, they like to ask for us to lay over the document. And I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, to lay over the Auditor General's report on what happened at Sussex Street. It's a very big report.
As Rohi would say, the evidence.
They want the layover.
Mr. Speaker, I come back to Michael Jackson.
And they want to know why they're sitting over there.
And again, they said, the song said, do you remember?
What about the man in the mirror?
So do you remember
The man in the mirror.
the HDM drug procurement scandal? This is the report. Another Auditor General report of what happened during that period. And we can go there.
You just had a moment.
So here, you had in this report, you had a tender, a selective tender that went out. 6 companies were selected. But when the people tender and it went in, apparently the preferred company was not one that had the right price. And so that tender was cancelled. And they did a second tender. And when they did the second tender, the preferred company alone put in a tender, and then they were awarded the contract. And according to the Auditor General's report, many of the items on that second contract, if you did a comparison between what was proposed in the first thing before they nullified that bid, or that selective tendering, if you compare the two, you would have seen on the last occasion the preferred bidder that got the contract, HDML Labs,
HDM Labs, that's the one.
they then
That's correct.
had many of the items that were far higher than most of those that were in the first set of tenders
Friends,
that they nullified.
and favorites.
That's the same guy who tried to get the
Who was
That, Mr. Speaker, talks about how they were managing during that period.
Mulder, Norton, or Cummings? Who was the
But it's not only that, Mr. Speaker.
Hardat Singh. Another prominent Afro guy.
Drugs and medical supplies, according to the Auditor General, were constantly out of stock. And in this report of the Auditor General for the period 2015 to 2017, when they did the audit, they said the facilities, 43% of the supplies were given to the facilities. 43%, they did not have enough supplies for the health centers, hospitals across this country. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, the waiting time for drugs to go to a health center was on average 50 days. So when you put in a crib at the MMU, it took you at least 50 days to be able to get your drugs and medical supplies. But then the Auditor General did a very interesting thing. They took some random facilities and they went and they checked to see for some items how long they were out of stock. And let's look at Saudi Hospital Pharmacy. There was a medication there, potassium chloride injection, that the people in Region 2 wanted. And you know how long they put in this order and how long they took to get the order? 742 days. They were waiting for this order. Not me making it up. It's in the Auditor General's report. And I lay it over so that you can get it. I lay it over so that you can get it.
Don't worry with the days part, man. Don't tell me how many years.
Leg 1 and Diamond Hospital, they were out of metformin tablets for 650 days. They couldn't get metformin tablets, essential to treat diabetic patients. Bartica Hospital, to treat malaria patients, they needed quinine. Quinine was out of Bartica Hospital for 1,028 days. That's a mining community. And they needed quinine. And here in the Auditor General's report, because I hear somebody saying that's a lie, it's in the report. 1,028 days, they couldn't get quinine tablets.
That's how they're running. Look at my file running now. Look how he's running.
Linden Hospital Complex was out of snake venom for 1,665 days. Hydrochlorothiazide for Cotton Tree Health Center. Diuretic. It's a diuretic. Right? They were out of this medication for 500 days. 500 days. And let me address the Panadol for you, Honorable Holder. In December, Dr. Carter had received in December 2024 6,000 Panadol tablets. She didn't say that though. She didn't say that. 6,000 tablets. And we can go to the crib and we can see that there's 6,000 tablets that were delivered to the health center. So we can talk, but that's the fact. We can talk, but that's the fact. Bring her. Bring her. I'm happy that she spoke. I'm happy that she spoke. 6,000 tablets, and I have the crib to show it. So, Mr. Speaker, lie is not a parliamentary word, but I'm telling you, and I have the crib to show it. I have the crib to show it. 6,000 Panadol delivered to that health center in 2024. 2024, it's there. You can go and find out. You can go and find out. So when you come here and you reference to Mary, you must know, come with the facts. Come with the facts. Because under this government, the supplies of pharmaceuticals is at 90% across the system. Compare with your 43. Compare with your 43 and dismal record. This here is the Auditor General's report. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to lay it over so that they can get a copy. Mr. Speaker, again, do you remember the Port Kaituba Hospital? Millions of dollars spent. And when we took over, it was still incomplete. And again, I know they like to doubt. Again, the Auditor General report will tell you what it was like and all the things that were incomplete at the hospital. Mr. Speaker, do you remember the head office of the ministry? Again, this was another project. And in that project, they were supposed to do it for $300 and something million. The project ended up costing 800 and something million. And when we check how the money was spent, the man was paid up front and didn't deliver on the project. Another Auditor General's report. And we can see in the report, it's here. And then, Mr. Speaker, I wonder if everybody can remember the COVID hospital. The COVID hospital. Another Auditor General report. Another Auditor General report. Here was the Auditor General's summary of findings. The facility is currently inoperable. Works on the electricity supply network for the main building and the backup generator were still in progress. Elevators are still to be installed, along with the medical gas installation, while interior finishing works were still in progress in one section of the building. Exterior works, the triage shed, access bridge, and gate were also incomplete. And he said they didn't know how these contracts were awarded. the criteria used and the basis for selecting the contractors to execute these works under the respective lots is unknown.
Unknown. The Auditor General.
So this is how they were procuring.
I wish I knew this. I would have bring this in my speech.
Mr. Speaker, and you have a whole litany. You have a whole litany of things that the Auditor General pointed out. Mr. Speaker, apart from all these mishandling, mismanagement, incompetence, the failure to prepare for COVID-19 and the subsequent disease management was one of the most monumental failure of the APNU AFC. Monumental failure, Mr. Speaker. This, Mr. Speaker, was their plan. This was your plan for COVID. I got a copy here. Let me read part of this plan to you.
Tell them how to close the border by the quarantine river.
Let me read part of the plan to you.
A week before the election.
In the last section of your plan, it says periodization. It says periodization. You remember this plan? Mr. Speaker, I want you to listen carefully to this. It is projected that the presence and threat of COVID-19 will remain in Guyana for between 8 weeks to 4 months. The APNU AFC, in their plan, said that COVID in Guyana would be here between 8 weeks and 4 months. 8 weeks and 4 months. Wonderful. And this is their plan. And the first part of the plan, it went on. It says, Guyana has completed the initial phase of discovery and confirmation of COVID-19. This was after we found the first patient on the 11th of March. And now we are engaged in the second phase, which is contact tracing from patient 0 as well as others. And then they're going to go to the third phase, which is likely hospitalization. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, let's review how they were managing COVID. First of all, there was a lack of PPEs. This country did not have N95 masks. In fact, they didn't have the regular masks. And not only that, and I can tell you, because I had to get N95 masks for those doctors who are working at the accident and emergency. When you fail, we deliver. When you fail, we deliver. I brought in N95 masks and give it to the doctors working at accident and emergency. What about testing? What about testing? PCR test, Mr. Speaker. PCR test, Mr. Speaker. The first,
The minister had to
why y'all hear this?
Yes, Frank.
Why you hear?
Hear it.
Yeah, go.
Hear it.
The first PCR test that they did was on the 10th of March. And we got the results shortly thereafter, which means that's how we know that the first patient had COVID. We took until the 10th of March to be able to do a PCR test.
imagine that.
What happened before? What happened before? Nonsense! What happened before? So between January and March, you did no tests.
None.
You did 0 tests. That's why we didn't know how many people were sick with COVID. That's why we didn't know how many people died from COVID between January and March.
Infected. Innocent people
They're
were
trying to rig
infected.
the election.
And this is the truth.
While she was busy signing
They're trying to
SOPs.
rig the election. That's what they
And while
Busy signing SOPs.
And while you were doing that, when the people test at the lab, they had to send the result to you for you to vet it.
before it released.
And then when you vet it, then you can pass it on to the doctors.
Meanwhile, she was signing
Meanwhile, the patients were suffering.
Dr. Lawrence, yes, Dr. Lawrence. Dr. Lawrence.
We had few isolation rooms.
in between signing
We didn't have hospital beds.
signing
No hospital beds.
We didn't have ventilators.
bandit.
No ventilators.
When you go in the hospital, you got to stand up.
And Mr. Speaker,
Floor, you got to lie down on the
they were proud to announce that they had a national task force headed by the Prime Minister, and it comprises of several other ministers of government. And they oversaw, Mr. Speaker, this task force. They oversaw this grand effort of incompetence. One of the achievements of the task force, they took, Mr. Speaker, more than 2 or 3 months before they can set up the secretariat for the task force. 2 to 3 months.
To set up the secretariat.
Yeah.
You know why? They were busy attempting to steal an election.
They're busy playing here, so trying to cook up the numbers.
And then
That's correct.
one of the other
Was busy signing.
undertaking of this task force was that they also wanted to name, this COVID hospital. So, Mr. Speaker, when you go through the minutes of the task force, they spent a number of antagonizing weeks and months trying to decide the right name for this hospital that they were going to build.
And signing the SOP, don't forget,
And I have all the minutes. I have them all.
busy signing the declaration for Region 4.
Tell them.
So they started out by saying the place was a sanatorium. And then they changed and they said, you know what? We should name it the Infectious Disease Hospital. And then they invite the president to go cut the ribbon and declare the place open. Right? And that was done on the 30th of July. And then
Testing, how you know what
when they cut the ribbon and declare the name and of the place, then they went back because they felt that the name was not a suitable name. They went back and they renamed it Center for Disease Prevention and Control. So that's how they finally named the place. But when you went in the place, what did it have? It was a shell,
Had nothing inside.
not a bed,
Nothing inside.
not a ventilator,
Useless.
not a Panadol
Useless.
was there.
All of you. Useless. Useless.
Nothing.
Useless APNU.
And you open the place to welcome visitors, to welcome patients to go there.
Visitors, they want patience. It's visitors they want.
Useless APNU.
Because there was a
Mr. Speaker,
Useless and incompetent.
one can only wonder what was the terms of reference of this task force. Was it really preparing to fight a pandemic? Or were they busy? Were they busy using COVID measures to thwart democracy in this country? Let's go through that.
Here was your record. Blank checks, blank checks.
Let's go through that.
You blank checks. Blank
It is now a fact. It is now a fact that APNU tried rigging the elections on the 2nd of March. It is also a fact that it took months before we got accurate results of the last elections. During that time, the COVID-19 task force imposed, one, a curfew from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. as if this virus was only operating in the night. That curfew was started on the 3rd of April 2020. What about the closure of the airports? On the 18th of March, they went and closed the airport to international travel. And you know what was the effect of that? That was to ensure they drive all the international observers away from Guyana.
Honorable Minister, we will have to get you an extension to continue with this presentation.
I'm afraid, yeah, I have a different calculation for Minister, Mr. Speaker. So I was just wondering, could you double check like the last time for me? Your timing? Because I have a different recorded time here for him. Could you just double check for me?
I have him starting at 5:48.
I am starting at 5:50, so, yeah. But even so, yeah, okay. I have to then ask that he be given 5 minutes to continue, sir, to conclude, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. You may continue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Let me just finish off this idea. Mr. Speaker, right here at this convention center, when we wanted to do the recount, Minister Ben, as one of the commissioners of GCOM, when he came here to observe this arrangements for the recount, he was thrown out, and the police marched him out, and you had that famous protest right behind here. But not only that, Mr. Speaker, what was important was that to prevent the recount or to delay it, they then came and used an insecticide to spray this place to prevent the recount. Y'all remember that? The insecticide don't kill the COVID virus.
You could run, but you can't hide.
They don't kill COVID virus, but to spray the place to prevent the recount.
Meanwhile, Karen was trying to put out ONR.
And there are many more. And there are many more.
Meanwhile, Cummings is going to take away a credit.
But, Mr. Speaker, let me quickly address some of the things that the Honorable Member Cummings spoke about. Let's talk about maternal deaths. 2017, maternal deaths in this country was 23. 2018, maternal deaths 20. 2019, 23. 2024, Mr. Speaker, it was down to 14. That's our record. And 2 of those deaths were deaths of Venezuelan migrants that crossed the border, came to Region 1. We medevac them, brought them to Georgetown, but unfortunately they died. Everybody that died is something that we mourn. It shouldn't happen. But we have reduced maternal deaths in this country because of the investments that we have been making. You came here and you spoke about hospital beds. In your period, how many hospital beds have you added? 0. 0. 0. Later this year, in another couple of months, Mr. Speaker, 6 new hospitals would be open. 75 beds each. 75 beds each we will be adding. And when we finish there, we have the Ogle facility, 252 beds. You have New Amsterdam, 240 beds. You have West Demerara, 220 beds. And then all the hospitals, Maruka, another 50 bed. Letem, another 50 bed. Keto, another 50 bed. This is our record. This is the record. You came here and you said you will do primary health care once again because that was in your manifesto. What is our record? In the last 3 years, Mr. Speaker, 3 years, we have built 25 new health centers and health posts across this country. You come and said you want to train community health workers. When we came here, many of the facilities had no community health worker. Under this government, more than 500 community health workers were trained.
Look at them, and they want to know why they're sitting over there. Look at them.
Mr. Speaker,
Why they're sitting over there.
they talk about nurses. Who you think increased the salary for the nurses?
The People's Progressive
The
Party.
People's Progressive Party increased the salary for nurses.
But they love the
And right now, we have 3,000 and more persons who would be graduating soon from nursing, assistant nursing program, and others. This year, we are also going to take in another 3,000 people. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on.
waste of time.
But I want to say to them that we have a track record to stand on.
That's correct.
You don't have anything to stand on.
That's correct.
And that is why we can confidently go back to the electorate, because they are proud of what we have delivered and they will re-elect us again.
That's correct. And again and again. And again and again, tell them, Frank. Useless up.
How many beds you buy? How many beds? How many beds?
Sell them. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Dr. Anthony. Honorable members, this is a good time to take the suspension. And I want to invite the members of the Business Subcommittee to stay in the chamber as we continue the meeting of the Business Subcommittee.
We are a peaceful people. Struggle is with struggle, and we don't look for trouble. Just ask around.